From about the 14th century, Bantu immigrants arrived during the Bantu expansion from Central Africa. From the late 18th century onwards, the Orlam people from the Cape Colony crossed the Orange River and moved into what is now southern Namibia. Their encounters with the Nama nomads were largely peaceful. The missionaries who accompanied the Orlam were welcomed by them, being granted the right to use water holes and graze on condition of annual payment. However, on their journey further north, the Orlam encountered the Herero clans of Windhoek, the Gababis, and the Okahanja, who resisted their encroachment. War between the Nama and Herero broke out in 1880, with hostilities, subsiding only after the German Empire deployed troops to the contested areas and secured the status quo between the Nama, Orlam, and Herero. The first Europeans to land and explore the area were Portuguese navigators Diogo Cao in 1485 and Bartolomeu Dias in 1496. But the Portuguese did not attempt to claim the area. Like much of the interior of sub-Saharan Africa, Namibia was not extensively explored by Europeans until the 19th century. At that time, traders and settlers came mainly from Germany and Sweden. In the late 19th century, the Dorsland Trek crossed the area on their way from the Republic of South Africa to Angola. Some of them settled in Namibia rather than continuing their journey. Namibia became a German colony in 1884 under Otto von Bismarck to prevent British encroachment, and was known as German Southwest Africa, Deutsch Südwestafrika. However, the Palgrave mission by the British governor of Cape Town had determined that only the port of Walvis Bay was worth occupying, and this was annexed to the Cape, province of British South Africa. From 1904 to 1907, the Herero and Namakwa tribes took up arms against the Germans. In an act of calculated punishment by the German occupiers, which has been called the first genocide of the 20th century, the government ordered the extinction of the indigenous population. In the Herero and Namakwa genocide, the Germans systematically killed 10,000 Nama, half the population, and about 65,000 Herero, about 80% of the population. The survivors, when finally released from captivity, were subjected to a policy of expropriation, deportation, forced labor, racial segregation, and discrimination in a system that in many ways anticipated the apartheid, established by South Africa in 1948. Most Africans were confined to so-called native areas, which were later transformed under South African administration in the post-1949 period into homelands, Bantustans. Some historians have speculated that the German genocide in Namibia was the model used by the Nazis in the Holocaust. The memory of the event remains relevant to ethnic identity in independent Namibia and its relationship with Germany. The German government formally apologized for the Namibian genocide in 2004 under South African rule. South Africa occupied the colony in 1915 after defeating German forces during World War I. They administered it from 1919 onwards as a League of Nations mandate territory, nominally under the British Crown, although the South African government wanted to annex Southwest Africa to its official territory. It never did so. It did, however, incorporate the territory into a de facto fifth province. The white minority of Southwest Africa elected representatives to the white-only South African Parliament. They also elected their own local administration, the SWA House of Representatives. The South African government appointed the SWA administrator, who had broad executive powers, following the replacement of the League by the United Nations in 1946. South Africa refused to hand over its previous mandate. The UN intended that it would eventually be replaced by a UN trusteeship agreement, requiring closer international oversight of the territory's administration, and a definite timetable for achieving Namibian independence. After the rise of the National Party in South Africa, they imposed apartheid in both regions. The Council of Herero Chiefs submitted a series of petitions to the UN in 1950, calling for Namibia to be granted independence but to no avail. During the 1960s, while European powers such as France and Britain granted independence to several colonies and trust territories in Africa, this resulted in pressure for South Africa to do the same to Namibia. In 1966, the International Court of Justice dismissed complaints brought by Ethiopia and Liberia against South Africa's continued presence in the region, but the UN General Assembly later revoked South Africa's mandate. South Africa continues to enforce de facto rule while SWAPO expands guerrilla efforts to end it. In 1971, the International Court of Justice issued a fatwa, declaring the continued administration of South Africa as illegal. National Assembly, which is independent. The country officially became independent on March 21. Nujoma was inaugurated as Namibia's first president at a ceremony attended by Nelson Mandela of South Africa, who had been released from prison the previous month, and representatives of 147 countries, including 20 heads of state. Following the end of apartheid in South Africa in 1994, South Africa handed over Walvis Bay to Namibia. Since independence, Namibia has successfully made the transition from apartheid, white minority, rule to parliamentary democracy. Multi-party democracy was introduced and has been maintained, with regular local, regional, and national elections. Several registered political parties are active and represented in the National Assembly. Although SWAPO has won every election since independence, the transition from the 15-year rule of President Sam Nujoma to his successor Hifikepunye Pohamba in 2005 was also smooth. Since independence, the Namibian government has promoted a policy of national reconciliation, issuing amnesties for those who had fought on either side during the Liberation War. The civil war in Angola has had a major impact on Namibians living in the northern regions of the country. In 1998, Namibian Defense Force, NDF, troops were sent to the Democratic Republic of the Congo as part of a contingent of the Southern African Development Community, SADC. In 1999, the central government successfully thwarted a separatist attempt in the northeastern Caprivi Strip. The Caprivi conflict was started by the Caprivi Liberation Army, CLA, a rebel group led by Meshake Muyongo. It wanted the Caprivi Strip to secede to form its own society. In the late 19th century, during European colonization, the German Empire established control over most of the region as a protectorate in 1884. It began developing infrastructure and agriculture and maintained the German colony until 1915, when South African forces defeated it militarily after the end of World War I. In 1920, the League of Nations mandated the country to British under South African administration. It imposed its laws, including racial classification and rules. From 1948, the National Party was elected to power. South Africa applied apartheid to what was then known as Southwest Africa. In 1878, the Cape of Good Hope colony had annexed the port of Walvis Bay and the Penguin Islands. These became an integral part of the new Union of South Africa when it was formed in 1910. In the 20th century, rebellions and demands for political representation by Native African political activists seeking independence resulted in the United Nations assuming direct responsibility for the territory in 1966, but South Africa retained de facto rule. In 1973, the United Nations recognized the Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO, as the official representative of the Namibian people. The party was dominated by the Ovambo people, who were the majority in the region. After a prolonged guerrilla war, South Africa installed an interim government in Namibia in 1985. Namibia gained full independence from South Africa in 1990. However, Walvis Bay and the Penguin Islands remained under South African control until 1994. Namibia is divided into 13 regions: Caprivi, Irongo, Hardap, Karas, Kavango, Khomas, Kunene, Ohangwena, Omaheke, Omusati, Oshana, Oshikoto, and Otyozonjupa. The vast dry Namib Desert makes Namibia one of the least densely populated countries in the world. Namibia has a high degree of political, economic, and social stability. Before its independence in 1990, the area was known as German Southwest Africa, Deutsch Südwestafrika, then as Southwest Africa, reflecting colonial occupation by Germany and South Africa, technically under the British Crown, reflecting South Africa's dominion status within the British Empire. Namibia, officially the Republic of Namibia, is a country in southwestern Africa on the Atlantic coast. It is bordered by Angola and Zambia to the north, Botswana to the east, and South Africa to the south. Namibia became independent from South Africa in 1990, making it one of the youngest countries in the world. Its capital is Windhoek. Namibia, dengan nama resmi Republic Namibia, adalah sebuah negara di Afrika bagian barat daya, tepatnya di pesisir Atlantik. Negara ini berbatasan dengan Angola dan Zambia di sebelah utara, Botswana di timur, dan Afrika Selatan di selatan. Namibia merdeka dari Afrika Selatan pada 1990, sehingga menjadi salah satu negara termuda di dunia. Ibu kotanya ialah Windhoek.